The autumn air felt cold against Sophie's face as she stood on the front steps of the massive house in Belmead, Nashville's wealthiest neighborhood. Her twin brother Nathan stood beside her, both of them holding the small wrapped presents they had brought for Jeremy's 12th birthday party. Inside, through the tall windows, they could see their classmates laughing, dancing, eating cake. But they were no longer welcome inside. Patricia Morrison stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her face twisted in disgust. Her voice carried across the lawn where several parents were gathering to pick up their children. I don't know how you two got past the security at the gate, but this party is for Jeremy's real friends, not charity cases from the east side. Sophie felt tears burning her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Nathan's hand found hers, squeezing tight. They had been so excited about this party. Jeremy had personally invited them at school last week. He seemed nice, different from the other rich kids who usually ignored them. We were invited, Nathan said quietly, his voice shaking slightly. Jeremy gave us invitations in class. Patricia's laugh was sharp and cruel. My son felt sorry for you. That doesn't mean you belong here. Look at your clothes. Look at those shoes. Do you think I want other parents seeing that I allowed? She paused, searching for words. You're kind at my son's party. A small crowd had gathered now. Some parents looked uncomfortable. Others whispered behind their hands. Sophie noticed Jeremy watching from the window, his face red, looking like he wanted to say something but couldn't. Please, Sophie whispered. We brought presents. We just wanted to celebrate with our friend. Friend. Patricia stepped closer, her perfume overwhelming. You're not his friends. You're nothing. Now get off my property before I call the police and tell them 2 kids from the projects are trespassing. The words hit like physical blows. Sophie and Nathan turned slowly, walking down the long driveway past the luxury cars and perfectly trimmed hedges. Behind them, they heard Patricia announce loudly, crisis averted, everyone. Let's get back to the party. What they didn't see was a tall man in the expensive suit standing near the valet station. Thomas Bennett had just arrived to pick up his daughter Amy from the party. He had heard every word. He watched the twins walk past him, their heads down, clutching their modest presents. He saw the pain in their eyes, the way they held each other up. He also saw something else. Dignity, grace, strength. Sophie and Nathan walked past the gate and down the tree-lined street toward the bus stop that would take them back to their neighborhood. The presents still in their hands felt heavier now, symbols of their foolish hope that things could be different. Behind them, Thomas Bennett stood perfectly still, his jaw clenched. His mind was already working, planning. He had built an empire by recognizing value where others saw nothing. And he had just witnessed something valuable being thrown away. Have you ever been judged for something you couldn't control? Drop a comment sharing your experience, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of hope and redemption. Rachel Grant sat at the small kitchen table in their 2-bedroom apartment, staring at the calendar on the wall. Every shift she worked at both the diner and the overnight cleaning service was marked in different colors. Blue for the diner, red for cleaning. The October squares were a patchwork of colors with barely any white space showing. She heard the apartment door open and close softly. Too softly. Her children were home from the party 3 hours early. Babies, she called, standing quickly. Why are you back so soon? Sophie appeared in the kitchen doorway first, her face streaked with dried tears. Nathan followed, still holding both presents. The sight of those wrapped packages, the ones Rachel had saved for 2 months to buy, made her stomach drop. What happened? Rachel knelt down, pulling both twins into her arms. The story came out in broken pieces. Patricia's words. The public humiliation. The walk of shame past all those wealthy families. Rachel held them tighter, feeling anger and helplessness war inside her chest. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. You promised things would get better, Sophie said, her voice muffled against Rachel's shoulder. You said if we worked hard and were kind, people would see us for who we really are. The words cut deep because Rachel had said exactly that. She had believed it too. She had raised her children to believe that poverty didn't define them, that their circumstances were temporary, that goodness and hard work would eventually pay off. I know, baby. I know. Rachel pulled back, looking at both their faces. But that woman was wrong. You hear me? Everything she said was wrong. Then why does it hurt so much? Nathan asked. Rachel didn't have an answer for that. She had asked herself the same question 1,000 times over the past 5 years since her husband died in a construction accident. The company he worked for had fought the life insurance claim. The legal battle drained what little savings they had. Rachel went from being a stay-at-home mom to working 80-hour weeks just to keep a roof over their heads. Sometimes people forget how to see what really matters, Rachel finally said. They get so caught up in money and appearances that they lose sight of kindness and character. Jeremy was our friend, Sophie said. Oh, we thought he was. Maybe he still is, Rachel offered, though she wasn't sure she believed it. Maybe his mother wouldn't let him stand up for you. They sat together on the worn couch, the three of them pressed close. Outside, Nashville's skyline glittered in the distance, full of lights and promise that felt impossibly far away. Rachel looked at the presents still sitting on the coffee table. What do you want to do with those? She asked gently. Nathan shrugged. Can we donate them? Maybe some other kids would like them. Rachel's heart swelled with pride and broke a little more at the same time. Even after being treated so cruelly, her children were thinking of others. That's a beautiful idea, she said. Later that night, after the twins were asleep, Rachel sat alone in the kitchen. She had $30 left until her next paycheck. The rent was paid. There was food in the fridge, though not much. But she had failed to protect her children from the cruelty of the world. That hurt more than any empty bank account. Progressed narrative development across sequential chapters. I'm at about 500 words for Chapter 2. Let me continue with Chapter 3. She didn't know that across town, in a penthouse office overlooking the city, Thomas Bennett was making phone calls. He was learning everything he could about Sophie and Nathan Grant. Their school records. Their mother's employment history. The accident that killed their father. The insurance dispute. By morning, he would have a plan. The knock on the door came at 8 in the morning on Sunday. Rachel had just finished her overnight cleaning shift and was making breakfast for the twins. She was exhausted, running on coffee and determination. Through the peephole, she saw a man in an expensive coat standing in the hallway of their modest apartment building. Her first instinct was to not answer. Bill collectors didn't usually dress that well, but you never knew. The man knocked again, patient but persistent. Mrs. Grant? My name is Thomas Bennett. I need to speak with you about what happened to your children yesterday. Rachel's blood went cold. Had Patricia pressed charges somehow? Was this a lawyer? She opened the door, but kept the chain on. What do you want? Thomas held up both hands, showing he meant no harm. I was at the party yesterday. I saw what happened to Sophie and Nathan. I heard everything Patricia Morrison said. I'm not here to cause problems. I want to help. Help. Rachel's voice was skeptical. Why would you want to help us? My daughter Amy was at that party. She came home crying, telling me about 2 kids who were treated horribly. When I looked into it, I found out those kids go to school with her. She talks about them sometimes. Says they're the kindest kids in class, always helping others, always working hard. Rachel's hand trembled on the door chain. I don't need charity, Mr. Bennett. It's not charity. Thomas pulled out a business card, sliding it through the small gap. I run Bennett Industries. We do manufacturing, distribution, community development. I'm not here as some rich guy with a guilty conscience. I'm here as a father who saw 2 children treated disgracefully, and as a businessman who believes people are the most valuable resource we have. Sophie and Nathan appeared behind their mother, drawn by the conversation. Their eyes widened when they saw the man from the driveway. You were there, Nathan said quietly. Thomas nodded. I was. And I'm sorry I didn't step in right then. I should have. But I'm here now, and I'd like to discuss something with your mother if she'll let me in. Rachel looked at her children, then back at Thomas. Every instinct told her to be cautious. Rich people didn't just show up to help poor families. There was always a catch, always strings attached. But Sophie and Nathan were watching her with hopeful eyes, and she was so tired of disappointing them. She slid the chain off and opened the door. Thomas stepped inside the small apartment, but he didn't look around with judgment like Rachel expected. He simply waited until she gestured to the worn couch. He sat down, and Rachel took the chair across from him, the twins flanking her on either side. "Here's what I'm proposing," Thomas said, leaning forward with his hands clasped. "My company has been looking to start a real community outreach program. Not just writing checks to charities, but actually investing in people. I want to create opportunities for families like yours, families that have fallen through the cracks despite working hard and playing by the rules." "What kind of opportunities?" Rachel asked, her voice guarded. "For you, a position in my company's community relations department. Good salary, benefits, normal hours. For Sophie and Nathan, a spot in a youth program we're developing. Educational support, mentorship, activities. And before you say no, before you tell me it sounds too good to be true, I need you to understand something." Thomas looked at each of them in turn. "I built my company from nothing. My father was a factory worker. My mother cleaned houses. I know what it's like to be judged for circumstances beyond your control. I know what it feels like to be invisible to people who should see you. I got my chance because someone took a risk on me. Now I have the resources to take risks on others." Rachel felt tears threatening. "Why us?" "Because your children were humiliated yesterday, and they walked away with grace. Because they brought presents even though I'm sure that stretched your budget. Because my daughter tells me they defend kids who get bullied, share their lunch with kids who forgot theirs, and never complain even though everyone knows they have less than most." Thomas paused. "That's the kind of character you can't teach. That's the kind of people I want to invest in." Sophie squeezed her mother's hand. Nathan leaned forward, his eyes wide. Rachel looked at the business card still in her hand. "This isn't charity," Thomas repeated. "This is an opportunity. But only if you want it." Rachel stared at the business card for a long moment. Bennett Industries. She had seen the name before, on billboards and news articles. One of Nashville's biggest success stories. The company had started as a small manufacturing operation and grown into a major employer, known for treating workers well. "What exactly would I be doing?" Rachel asked carefully. Thomas pulled out a folder from his briefcase. Inside were detailed job descriptions, salary information, and benefit packages. Community Relations Specialist. You would work with families in underserved neighborhoods, connecting them with resources, creating partnerships between my company and local organizations. Your background gives you insight that most people in those positions don't have. You know what families are actually struggling with because you live it." Rachel looked at the salary figure and felt her breath catch. It was more than double what she made working her 2 jobs combined. Health insurance, dental, vision, a retirement plan, normal working hours that would let her actually see her children, and the program for Sophie and Nathan. "We're calling it Second Chances Youth Initiative. After-school program 5 days a week. Homework help, mentorship from local professionals, sports and arts activities, leadership development. Transportation provided. All meals included. Completely free for participating families." Thomas pulled out more papers. "We'll start with 20 kids. Sophie and Nathan would be in the first group. They'd help us understand what works and what doesn't. Their input would shape the program." Nathan looked at his mother with pleading eyes. "Mom, this sounds amazing." "It does," Rachel admitted. "But I need to understand the catch." "There's always a catch." Thomas nodded, as if he expected this. "The catch is that I need this to succeed. I'm putting significant resources into this initiative. If it fails, it reflects badly on my company. So I need dedicated people who believe in the mission. I need someone like you, Rachel, who understands what's at stake because you've lived it. And I need kids like Sophie and Nathan who can help us reach others who might be skeptical." "You're asking us to be the face of this program," Rachel said slowly. "In part, yes. There will be media coverage, community events. People will want to know your story. But..." Thomas paused, his expression serious. "I will never ask you to share anything you're not comfortable with. Your privacy matters. Your dignity matters. This is about creating genuine opportunities, not exploiting your struggles for publicity." Sophie spoke up for the first time. "What happened to us yesterday, at the party? Will that be part of the story?" Thomas looked at her directly. "Only if you want it to be. Patricia Morrison humiliated you. But you don't owe anyone your pain. If you want that experience to fuel something good, to show other kids they're not alone, then we can talk about it. But if you want to keep it private, that's completely your choice. Rachel appreciated his honesty. She looked around their small apartment, at the peeling paint and the window that didn't quite close all the way. She thought about the life she wanted for her children versus the life she could currently provide. "Can I have some time to think about it?" she asked. "Of course. Take a few days. Talk it over with Sophie and Nathan. Do research on my company. Call the references I've included in that folder. Talk to current employees. I want you to feel completely confident in this decision." Thomas stood up. "I know accepting help is hard, Rachel. Especially when you've been fighting alone for so long. But sometimes the bravest thing we can do is accept the hand that's reaching out to us." After Thomas left, the three of them sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Nathan said, "Mom, I think we should do it." "Me too," Sophie added. "He seems genuine. And even if it's scary, isn't it scarier to wonder what might have happened if we said no?" Rachel pulled them both close. "You two are wiser than your years. Let me make some calls tomorrow. We'll research everything. But if it all checks out." She paused, hope blooming in her chest for the first time in years. If it all checks out, then maybe it's time to accept that blessing. 3 weeks later, Rachel walked through the doors of Bennett Industries wearing clothes that actually fit properly. She had used part of her first paycheck advance to buy professional attire at a discount store, refusing to spend extravagantly even though she finally had money. The orientation had been thorough and welcoming. Her colleagues in the community relations department treated her like an equal, not a charity case. Thomas had introduced her to everyone personally, emphasizing her expertise rather than her struggles. "Rachel brings real-world experience that will make our programs effective," he had told the team. "She knows what works because she knows what's needed." Meanwhile, Sophie and Nathan had started at the Second Chances Youth Initiative. The program operated out of a renovated community center in a working-class Nashville neighborhood. When Rachel dropped them off that first day, she was nervous. Would the other kids be kind? Would her children feel out of place again? But within minutes, both twins were absorbed into a group of kids playing basketball in the gym. Rachel watched through the window as Sophie actually laughed, while shooting hoops with 2 other girls. Nathan was deep in conversation with a boy about his age, both of them gesturing excitedly about something. "They're going to be fine," a voice said beside her. Rachel turned to find Thomas standing there, also watching the kids. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong," she admitted. "For this to be too good to be true." "It's real," Thomas assured her. "And it's going to get even better. We've got 15 more kids enrolled already. Teachers are volunteering as tutors. Local businesses are donating supplies and snacks. The community is responding exactly how I hoped." Over the next few weeks, Rachel discovered she was good at her job. Really good. She connected with families in a way that other outreach workers couldn't because she spoke their language. She knew the fear of choosing between rent and groceries. She understood the shame of needing help. She could look parents in the eye and say, "I've been there. This isn't charity. This is community." One afternoon, she organized a resource fair at the community center. She invited representatives from food banks, job training programs, healthcare clinics, and utility assistance programs. She expected maybe 20 families to show up. Over 100 came. People lined up at tables, asking questions, filling out applications, finding hope. Rachel moved through the crowd, introducing people to resources, making connections, seeing possibility bloom on tired faces. Thomas's daughter Amy had also become a regular presence at the program. She had asked her father if she could volunteer, wanting to spend more time with Sophie and Nathan. The 3 of them became inseparable, proving that friendship could cross economic boundaries when given the chance. One evening, as Rachel picked up the twins, Sophie said, "Mom, there's a girl in the program named Beth. Her dad just lost his job. She was crying today because she thinks they might lose their apartment. Do you think you could help them?" Nathan added, "The way Mr. Bennett helped us." Rachel felt emotion swell in her chest. Her children, who had been hurt so badly, wanted to help someone else. I'll look into it tomorrow, she promised. The next day, Rachel researched Beth's family. The father, Carl, had worked in construction for 15 years before a company downsizing cost him his job. He had been applying everywhere, but kept getting rejection after rejection. Rachel made some calls. By the end of the week, Carl had an interview with Bennett Industries for a warehouse position. By the end of the month, he had the job. Beth's family stabilized. Sophie and Nathan beamed with pride when Beth thanked them. You see, Thomas said when Rachel told him about it. This is how it works. We help you. You help others. They help more people. It multiplies. That's not charity. That's community. Rachel realized he was right. For the first time since her husband died, she felt like she was part of something bigger than just survival. She was building something that would last, creating ripples of change that would reach farther than she could imagine. The program's success started attracting attention. Local news stations asked to do features. Newspapers wanted to write stories. Thomas always made sure Rachel and the families had the final say on what was shared. When a reporter asked Rachel what changed her life, she thought carefully before answering. Someone saw us as people worth investing in. And now we're trying to see others the same way. By December, the Grant family's transformation was complete. Rachel had been promoted to Senior Community Relations Coordinator. They had moved into a better apartment in a safer neighborhood, though Rachel insisted on staying somewhere modest. I don't want to forget where we came from, she told Thomas. Sophie and Nathan were thriving at school and in the program. Their grades had improved dramatically with proper support. They had made friends, real friends who valued them for who they were. But more importantly, they had discovered a passion for helping others. One afternoon, Nathan came home with an idea. Mom, there are so many families at our old apartment complex who are struggling just like we were. What if we organize something to help them? Sophie nodded enthusiastically. Like a food drive. Or maybe collecting winter coats. It gets so cold, and I remember how we only had thin jackets last year. Rachel looked at her children, her heart full. They had every reason to be bitter about their past circumstances, but instead they wanted to give back. I think that's a wonderful idea. Let's talk to Mr. Bennett about it. Thomas not only supported the idea, but offered to match whatever the program collected dollar for dollar. He also provided transportation and volunteers from his company. The news of the drive spread through the Second Chances program, and other kids got excited about participating. The following Saturday, over 30 kids from the program gathered at the community center, ready to collect donations. Rachel had organized collection points throughout Nashville, partnering with local businesses and churches. The goal was to gather enough food and winter clothing for 50 families. They collected enough for over 200. Sophie and Nathan worked tirelessly, sorting donations, organizing distribution lists, and personally delivering boxes to families they knew from their old neighborhood. When they knocked on doors, they saw the same surprise and gratitude they had felt months earlier. One elderly woman, Mrs. Henderson, opened her door to find the twins holding a box of food and a warm winter coat. She had lived in the apartment below the Grants and had often shared what little she had with them. How did you afford all this? She asked, tears in her eyes. Someone helped us, Sophie explained. Now we're helping others. And next time, maybe you can help someone too. That's how it works. Cataloged character roster and plotted narrative resolution threads. I need to continue the story and track the characters. So far I have. Rachel Grant, mother. Sophie and Nathan Grant, twins. Thomas Bennett, billionaire. Amy Bennett, his daughter. Patricia Morrison, mean host mother. Jeremy, Patricia's son. Beth, girl in program whose dad lost job. Carl, Beth's father. Mrs. Henderson, elderly neighbor. I need to continue with more chapters and make sure all threads are resolved. The community drive made the local news. A reporter interviewed the twins, asking them why helping others was important to them. Nathan answered simply, because somebody helped us when we had nothing. And it changed everything. We want other people to feel that hope too. The segment aired during the evening news and went viral on social media. Dozens of people called Bennett Industries wanting to donate or volunteer. Thomas had to hire additional staff just to coordinate the response. But the most unexpected call came from someone Rachel never thought she would hear from again. Patricia Morrison left a voicemail on Rachel's work phone. Her voice was shaky, uncertain. "Rachel, this is Patricia, Jeremy's mother. I saw the news story about the food drive. I need to talk to you. Please. I know I don't deserve it, but please call me back." Rachel stared at her phone for a long time. The hurt from that day in Belmead was still fresh, even months later. The memory of her children's faces as they were publicly humiliated still made her angry. Part of her wanted to delete the message and move on. But Sophie and Nathan had just spent their Saturday helping people. They had shown grace to strangers. Could Rachel do any less? She called Patricia back. They agreed to meet at a coffee shop in a neutral location. When Rachel arrived, Patricia was already there, looking smaller somehow than she had on that October day. Her expensive clothes and perfect hair couldn't hide the guilt written across her face. "Thank you for coming," Patricia said quietly as Rachel sat down. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," Rachel admitted. "What you said to my children was cruel." "I know." Patricia's voice cracked. "There's no excuse for it. I've been thinking about that day every single day since it happened. When I saw Sophie and Nathan on the news, talking about helping people who have nothing, I felt sick. They have more character at 12 than I developed in 40 years. Rachel waited, not willing to make this easy. "Jeremy has been devastated," Patricia continued. "He really did want them at his party. He talks about them constantly, says they are the nicest kids in school. After I kicked them out, he barely spoke to me for weeks. He made me watch that news segment 5 times. He said, 'Mom, you hurt the best people I know.'" "He was right," Rachel said simply. "I know. And I'm so sorry. Not just sorry I got caught or sorry people know what I did. I'm sorry for who I was in that moment. For teaching my son that people's worth is measured by their bank accounts. For hurting children who did nothing wrong." Patricia wiped her eyes. "I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want to do better. I want to help. If you'll let me." Rachel studied the woman across from her. Patricia's remorse seemed genuine. And if Rachel had learned anything from Thomas Bennett's kindness, it was that everyone deserved a second chance. "The Second Chances program is always looking for volunteers," Rachel said slowly. "We need people to tutor, to mentor, to just show up and be present for kids who need support." Patricia looked up, hope and surprise in her eyes. "You would let me volunteer? After what I did?" "Sophie and Nathan taught me something," Rachel said. "They could have become bitter. They could have decided that rich people are all cruel. But instead, they became friends with Thomas's daughter. They help everyone they can, regardless of who they are. If they can do that, I can give you a chance to prove you've changed." Patricia nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'll be there. Whatever you need. And Rachel, please tell Sophie and Nathan how sorry I am." The following Tuesday, Patricia Morrison showed up at the Second Chances Youth Initiative. Rachel had prepared the staff, warning them about what happened and asking them to give Patricia a chance to prove herself. Thomas had been skeptical but trusted Rachel's judgment. When Sophie and Nathan walked into the community center after school and saw Patricia standing there in jeans and a volunteer t-shirt, they froze. Amy, who was with them, immediately put herself between them and Patricia, protective of her friends. Patricia saw their reactions and her face crumpled. She approached slowly, carefully, keeping distance between them. "Sophie, Nathan, I know I'm probably the last person you want to see. But I came to apologize. Really apologize, not just with words." Sophie exchanged a look with her brother. They had talked about this moment with their mother the night before. Rachel had explained that Patricia wanted to volunteer and asked how they felt about it. The twins had surprised her by saying they wanted to hear what Patricia had to say. "Why?" Nathan asked directly. "Why did you treat us like that?" Patricia took a deep breath. "Because I was scared. Not of you, but of what you represented. I grew up poor too, though I've spent 20 years trying to pretend I didn't. When I saw you at my house, in your worn clothes, I saw myself at your age. And instead of feeling compassion, I felt anger. I've worked so hard to distance myself from that life, and you reminded me of everything I was trying to forget." So you hurt us because you hated yourself? Sophie asked, her voice soft but firm. The question landed like a punch. Patricia nodded slowly. Yes, that's exactly what I did. And it was wrong. You two did nothing to deserve my cruelty. You came to celebrate with Jeremy. You brought presents. You were kind. And I repaid that with hatred and humiliation. Jeremy cried that night, Patricia continued. He told me he was ashamed of me. He said Sophie and Nathan were the kids who helped him with math when he was struggling. They shared their lunch with him once when he forgot his. They stood up for him when older kids were teasing him about being small. And I threw them out like trash. Amy had relaxed her defensive stance but stayed close to the twins, ready to protect them if needed. Sophie and Nathan stood together, processing Patricia's words. What do you want from us? Nathan finally asked. Nothing, Patricia said quickly. I don't want you to forgive me or forget what happened. I just want the chance to do better. Your mother said I could volunteer here. I want to help other kids the way I should have helped you. I want to learn from my mistakes instead of just feeling guilty about them. Rachel appeared from the office, having watched the conversation from a distance. Sophie, Nathan, this is your decision. If you're not comfortable with Mrs. Morrison being here, she won't volunteer. Your feelings matter more than her redemption. The twins looked at each other, that silent communication that only twins seemed to possess passing between them. Finally, Sophie spoke. Mr. Bennett gave our mom a second chance when nobody else would. Mom is giving you a second chance now. I guess we should too. But, Nathan added firmly, you have to actually be different. Not just say you're sorry but really change. That means treating everyone here with respect, no matter what they are wearing or where they live. Patricia nodded vigorously. I will. I promise I will. Over the next several weeks, Patricia proved her sincerity. She showed up every Tuesday and Thursday without fail. She tutored kids in reading. She helped organize activities. She listened to their stories without judgment. Most importantly, she was kind. The other volunteers noticed. The kids noticed. Slowly, Sophie and Nathan began to relax around her. They weren't friends, might never be friends, but they developed a mutual respect. Jeremy started coming to the program too, wanting to reconnect with the twins. The four of them spent time together, working on homework, playing basketball, just being kids. Patricia watched from a distance, grateful for the grace her son's friends had shown. One afternoon, a new family came to the program. The mother looked nervous, her two children clinging to her sides. Their clothes were worn. Their shoes had holes. Patricia saw Rachel start to approach them and quickly moved to help. Welcome, Patricia said warmly, kneeling down to the children's level. I'm Patricia. What are your names? The little girl whispered something too quiet to hear. Patricia smiled gently. That's okay. You don't have to talk until you're ready. How about I show you where the snacks are? We have really good cookies today. Rachel watched the interaction, catching Thomas's eye across the room. He nodded approvingly. People could change. Second chances could work. Grace could multiply. Are you someone who believes in second chances? Comment below with a time someone gave you grace when you didn't deserve it, and subscribe to see how this story of redemption unfolds. Later that evening, Jeremy approached Sophie and Nathan in the gym. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? Sophie asked. For helping my mom become a better person. For giving her a chance when she didn't deserve one. Jeremy paused. You could have told everyone at school what she did. You could have made things really hard for me. But you didn't. Nathan shrugged. That wouldn't have helped anyone. Besides, Mr. Bennett taught us that hurting people who hurt you just creates more hurt. It's better to create more kindness instead. Spring arrived in Nashville with warm breezes and blooming dogwoods. The Second Chances Youth Initiative had expanded dramatically. What started with 20 kids now served 75 across 3 different locations. Thomas had hired additional staff and was planning 2 more centers. Rachel had become the program's director, overseeing all operations. She worked closely with Thomas, but the relationship had evolved into genuine partnership. He valued her insights and trusted her completely with the program's growth. Sophie and Nathan had become unofficial ambassadors. They spoke at fundraising events, welcomed new families, and mentored younger kids. Their transformation from the humiliated children of October to confident young leaders was remarkable. One Thursday afternoon, Rachel was working in her office when Thomas knocked on the open door. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Always." "What's up?" Thomas sat down, looking unusually serious. "I've been thinking about expanding the program beyond Nashville. Maybe Memphis, Chattanooga, even into Kentucky. But I want to make sure we're doing this right. I want your honest opinion. Are we really making a difference, or are we just making ourselves feel good?" Rachel leaned back in her chair, considering the question carefully. "Let me tell you about Marcus. He's 8. Came to us in January. His mom works 3 jobs. He was failing school, getting in fights, heading down a bad path. Last week, he read an entire book out loud to his reading group. First time he's finished a book in his life. When he was done, he cried. Not because he was sad, but because he was proud of himself." She pulled out her phone, showing Thomas a photo. "That's Beth's dad, Carl. Remember him? The one we helped get a job at your warehouse? He just got promoted to shift supervisor. He came by yesterday to tell me he's saving for a house." "A house, Thomas?" "6 months ago, he thought his family would be homeless." Rachel stood up, walking to the window overlooking the community center's playground. Kids were playing, laughing, being children without the weight of poverty crushing their spirits. Patricia Morrison volunteers here twice a week. Jeremy is one of our best peer tutors. Amy has gotten her entire grade at school involved in fundraising. We've helped 23 parents find better jobs. We've connected families with healthcare, housing assistance, food security. We've kept kids in school who were about to drop out. She turned back to Thomas. "Yes, we're making a real difference. But more than that, we're showing people a different way to live. We're proving that communities can support each other, that wealth doesn't have to create walls between people, that everyone has value regardless of their circumstances." Thomas nodded slowly. "Then we expand. Not because I want more good publicity or tax write-offs. Because this works. And because there are kids in Memphis and Chattanooga and Louisville who deserve the same chance we gave Sophie and Nathan." That evening, the program held a family dinner night. Over 100 people filled the community center, sharing a meal together. Rachel watched as families from different neighborhoods, different backgrounds, different circumstances all sat together. Rich and poor, black and white, established Nashville residents and new immigrants. All of them connected by the belief that everyone deserved support and respect. Sophie was helping serve food with Amy and Jeremy. Nathan was playing with younger kids in the corner. Patricia was deep in conversation with a mother who had just enrolled her children. Thomas was talking with parents about job opportunities at his company. This was what community looked like. This was what happened when people chose kindness over judgment, investment over charity, grace over condemnation. Later, as Rachel helped clean up, a woman she didn't recognize approached her. "Are you Rachel Grant?" "I am. Can I help you?" The woman smiled. "I'm Christina Wallace. I'm a producer for a national morning show. We've been following the story of this program. We'd like to do a feature on it. Would you and your family be interested?" Rachel's first instinct was to say no. They had done local news, but national television felt like too much exposure. But then she thought about all the families in other cities who were struggling the way she had struggled. If their story could help create more programs like this one, wasn't it worth being uncomfortable? "Can I think about it?" Rachel asked. "And talk to my kids?" "Of course. Here's my card. We'd love to share your story with the country." That night, Rachel sat down with Sophie and Nathan. She explained about the television offer and asked what they thought. "Will it help other kids?" Sophie asked. "It might. If people see what's possible, maybe they'll create programs in their own cities." Nathan nodded. "Then we should do it. Our story isn't just about us anymore. It's about showing people that things can get better." Rachel felt tears in her eyes. Her children, who had been hurt so deeply, wanted to use their pain to help others. "When did you two become so wise?" "We learned from you, Mom," Sophie said. "You never gave up, even when things were really hard. You taught us that our circumstances don't define us. Now we get to teach that to other people. The national morning show segment aired in early May, and the response was overwhelming. The phone lines at Bennett Industries were flooded with calls from people across the country wanting to start similar programs. Donations poured in. Other business owners reached out, asking how they could replicate the model in their communities. Thomas decided to host a major celebration to honor the program's first year and announce the expansion plans. He rented out Nissan Stadium, home of the Tennessee Titans, for a massive community event. Every family that had participated in Second Chances was invited, plus volunteers, donors, and supporters. The day of the celebration was perfect. Clear blue skies, comfortable temperature, excitement buzzing through the air. Over 3,000 people filled the stadium, families wearing bright colors, kids running and playing, volunteers setting up activities and food stations. Rachel stood on the field, looking up at the stands filling with people, and felt overwhelmed. 1 year ago, her children had been kicked out of a party. 1 year ago, she was working 2 jobs and could barely afford to feed her family. 1 year ago, she felt hopeless and alone. Now she was directing a program that had changed hundreds of lives. Now she had a career she was passionate about. Now she had a community of people who supported each other. Pretty amazing, isn't it? Thomas appeared beside her, also looking around at the crowd. I still can't believe this is real sometimes, Rachel admitted. That this all started because you saw 2 kids being treated badly and decided to do something about it. No, Thomas corrected gently. It started because those 2 kids had character worth investing in, and because their mother raised them right despite impossible circumstances. I just provided resources. You all did the real work. The program began with performances from kids in the initiative. A choir sang. A dance group performed. Sophie and Nathan gave a presentation about the program's impact, complete with photos and statistics. Their confidence on stage made Rachel's heart swell with pride. Then Thomas took the microphone. When I started this program, people told me I was wasting money. They said poor kids wouldn't appreciate the opportunity. They said their families would take advantage of the system. They said I was being naive and foolish. He paused, looking around at the thousands of faces watching him. They were wrong. Dead wrong. Every single family here has worked hard, shown up, supported each other. Parents have found jobs, gone back to school, created better lives for their children. Kids have improved grades, discovered talents, become leaders. This isn't charity. This is what happens when you treat people with dignity and respect. The crowd erupted in applause. Thomas waited for it to die down before continuing. Today, I'm announcing that Second Chances will expand to 5 new cities over the next year. Memphis, Chattanooga, Louisville, Birmingham, and Little Rock. We've secured funding, locations, and partners. And we're hiring staff from those communities, people who understand the challenges because they've lived them. More applause. Rachel wiped tears from her eyes. Sophie and Nathan stood with Amy, all 3 of them beaming. But none of this would be possible without the Grant family, Thomas continued. Rachel, Sophie, Nathan, would you please join me up here? Reluctantly, the 3 of them walked to the center of the field. Thomas handed the microphone to Rachel. She looked out at the sea of faces, many of them families she had personally worked with. She thought about what to say, how to express what this year had meant. A year ago, my children came home heartbroken, Rachel began, her voice shaking slightly. They had been humiliated for being poor. They asked me why kindness and hard work didn't matter. I didn't have a good answer for them. But then Thomas Bennett showed us that sometimes angels come in business suits. Sometimes second chances come from unexpected places. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead to the best changes. She looked at Sophie and Nathan. My kids taught me something important. They taught me that grace is stronger than bitterness. They taught me that when you've been hurt, the best response is to help others so they don't hurt the same way. They taught me that our story doesn't end with pain. It can end with purpose. Sophie took the microphone next. Last year, a woman told us we were nothing. She said we didn't belong. She tried to make us feel worthless. But Mr. Bennett saw something different. He saw potential. He saw value. And because of that, 75 kids in Nashville have opportunities they didn't have before. And soon, kids in 5 other cities will have those chances too. One person choosing kindness over cruelty changed everything. Nathan spoke last. If you're here today and you're struggling, if you feel invisible or worthless, please know that you're not. You matter. Your story matters. And if someone offers to help you, if someone reaches out with genuine kindness, take that hand. Accept that grace. And then, when you're stronger, reach out to help someone else. That's how we change the world. One person at a time. One act of kindness at a time. The stadium erupted in applause and cheers. People were crying, hugging, celebrating. The mayor of Nashville came on stage to announce a city proclamation declaring its second Chances Day. Local businesses pledged support. Community leaders committed to partnering with the program. But the moment that meant the most came later, during the dinner service. Patricia Morrison approached Rachel, Jeremy by her side. Rachel, I wanted you to know that I've decided to use some of my husband's business profits to fund a scholarship program through Second Chances. It will help kids pay for college or trade school. I'm calling it the Sophie and Nathan Grant Scholarship Fund. Rachel stared at her, speechless. Patricia continued, I can't undo what I did. I can't take back those words or that pain. But I can make sure that my money, my privilege, does some good in the world. I want other kids to have the opportunities one almost destroyed for your children. Jeremy spoke up. Sophie and Nathan are my best friends now. They've taught me what real friendship looks like. I want other kids to have friends like them. Rachel hugged Patricia, something she never thought would happen. Thank you. Thank you for changing. Thank you for proving that people can be better. 1 year later, October arrived again. The anniversary of that terrible day when Sophie and Nathan were humiliated. But this October was completely different. The Second Chances Youth Initiative was now in 7 cities, serving over 400 families. Rachel had been promoted to regional director, overseeing all locations. Sophie and Nathan were 13 now, confident teenagers who balanced school, volunteering, and normal kid activities. The twins had decided to host their own birthday party, their first real celebration since that awful day at Jeremy's house. But this party was different. They wanted to hold it at the community center and invite everyone from the program. Are you sure? Rachel asked when they told her the plan. You could have a party just for your friends. Something small and special. This is special, Mom, Sophie insisted. All these kids are our friends. We want to celebrate with everyone. Besides, last year's party that went wrong ended up changing our lives. This year's party should show how much things have changed. The community center was decorated with balloons and streamers, all in bright colors. Tables were loaded with food donated by local restaurants. A DJ played music. Over 100 kids and families filled the space, a beautiful mix of backgrounds and circumstances, all connected by the program. Thomas and Amy were there, of course. Patricia and Jeremy too. The mayor came, as did several city council members. Local business owners who had supported the program attended. News cameras captured the event, another feel-good story about second chances. But for Sophie and Nathan, the best part was seeing their friends happy and celebrating together. Beth was there with her family, thriving now that her dad had stable work. Marcus, the boy who couldn't read, was showing off his latest book report. Dozens of other kids who had been struggling a year ago were now flourishing. As the party reached its peak, Thomas asked for everyone's attention. I have an announcement, he said, standing on a small stage. Rachel, can you join me up here? Sophie and Nathan too. Curious, the three of them made their way to the stage. Thomas pulled out an envelope. Rachel, when you came to work for me, I told you this wasn't charity. It was an investment. Well, investments are supposed to pay returns. And you've delivered beyond anything I could have imagined. He handed her the envelope. Inside is a check for a bonus equal to a year's salary. But more importantly, there's also a letter offering you a new position. Vice President of Community Impact for all of Bennett Industries. You would oversee not just Second Chances, but all our community initiatives across the Southeast. It comes with a significant raise, full executive benefits, and the authority to expand the program however you see fit. Rachel opened the envelope with shaking hands. The numbers on the check made her dizzy. The salary in the letter was more than she ever dreamed of earning. But it was the title that really hit her. Vice President. Executive level. A seat at the table where decisions were made. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," Thomas urged. "You've earned this, Rachel. Not because I feel sorry for you or because it makes good PR. Because you're exceptional at what you do. Because you've built something remarkable. Because you deserve to be in leadership." "Yes," Rachel said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." The crowd erupted in applause. Sophie and Nathan rushed to hug their mother. Thomas shook her hand formally, then pulled her into a warm embrace. But the surprises weren't over. Amy stepped onto the stage carrying 2 wrap boxes. "Sophie, Nathan, these are for my dad and me. Happy birthday." The twins opened the boxes to find envelopes inside. Each envelope contained a letter from the University of Tennessee offering them full scholarships starting when they graduated high school. The scholarships would cover tuition, room and board, books, and even a stipend for living expenses. "We wanted to make sure that when the time comes, you can go to college without worrying about money," Thomas explained. "You've both worked so hard. You've helped build this program. You've been mentors to younger kids. You've shown what leadership looks like. This is our investment in your future." Sophie and Nathan were speechless. They looked at each other, then at their mother, then at Thomas and Amy. Finally, Nathan found words. "Thank you. Thank you for seeing us when other people didn't. Thank you for believing in us." As the party continued, Rachel found a quiet moment to step outside. She looked up at the Nashville skyline, thinking about the journey of the past 2 years. From desperation to hope. From struggle to success. From being kicked out of a party to being celebrated by an entire community. Patricia joined her on the steps. "I've been thinking about that day a lot," Patricia said quietly. "The day I kicked them out. I wonder sometimes what would have happened if I hadn't been so cruel. Would any of this have happened? Would the program exist?" Rachel considered the question. "I don't know. Maybe things had to break before they could be rebuilt better. Maybe Sophie and Nathan needed to experience that pain so they could truly understand what other kids are going through. Maybe I needed to be that desperate so I would take the risk when Thomas offered help. Or maybe," Patricia suggested, "good things can come from bad situations when people choose to respond with grace instead of bitterness. You could have hated me forever. Your kids could have become cynical. But you all chose differently." "We learn from the best," Rachel said, nodding toward the community center where Thomas was dancing with a group of kids, completely unbothered by his expensive suit getting wrinkled. "He showed us that success isn't about how much you have, it's about what you do with what you have." Inside, Sophie and Nathan stood with Amy, Jeremy, and their other friends, watching the celebration they had created. "You know what's crazy?" Sophie said. "If that party had gone well last year, we might never have met Mr. Bennett. We might never have started this program. All these families might still be struggling." "So you're saying getting kicked out was a good thing?" Jeremy asked, still feeling guilty about his mother's actions despite everything that had happened since. "No," Nathan said firmly. "What your mom did was wrong. The pain was real. But what happened after, the choices people made, the kindness people showed, that's what turned it into something good. The bad thing was still bad. But good people made sure it didn't stay bad." Amy smiled. "That's what second chances means, right? Nobody's perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. But everyone also deserves the chance to do better." As the party wound down and families started heading home, Rachel gathered Sophie and Nathan close. "I'm so proud of you too," she said. "Not because of the scholarships or the celebration, but because of who you've become. You could have let that terrible day define you. Instead, you defined yourselves." "We had a good teacher," Sophie said, hugging her mother tight. Later, after everyone had left and the community center was being cleaned up, Thomas found Rachel in her office. "I meant what I said earlier. You've built something amazing here. This program is going to touch thousands of lives over the years. Maybe tens of thousands. And it started because you were brave enough to accept help when it was offered. And because you were generous enough to offer it, Rachel countered. We were both just doing what needed to be done, Thomas said. That's what community is. Seeing what needs to happen and making it happen. You needed an opportunity. I had resources. Sophie and Nathan needed support. We provided it. Now they help others. And it multiplies. Rachel looked around her office, at the photos of families who had been helped, at the thank you notes from kids, at the plans for program expansion. You know what I realized? That day Patricia kicked out my children was one of the worst days of our lives. But it led to some of the best days too. Not because the hurt didn't matter, but because we refused to let hurt be the end of the story. Thomas nodded. That's the secret, isn't it? Not that bad things don't happen, but that we have the power to decide what comes next. We can choose bitterness or growth. We can choose isolation or community. We can choose to let pain make us smaller or let it make us stronger. And we can choose to pass on the kindness we received, Rachel added. That's what makes it sustainable. It's not just about us anymore. It's about creating a culture where helping each other is normal, where second chances are expected, where everyone has value. As Rachel drove home that night with Sophie and Nathan asleep in the backseat, she thought about the full circle they had traveled. From the lowest point to heights they never imagined. From humiliation to celebration. From poverty to security. From despair to hope. But most importantly, from being helped to helping others. That was the real gift Thomas Bennett had given them. Not just financial support or job opportunities, but the understanding that their story could inspire change. That their pain had purpose. That their struggle could become strength. The twins' birthday party had been perfect. Not because it was fancy or expensive, but because it was filled with love, community, and hope. It was proof that kindness could multiply, that second chances could transform lives, that choosing grace over judgment could change the world. As they pulled into their apartment complex, much nicer than the one they had left behind, but still humble, still grounded, Rachel smiled. They had come so far. But the journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. Because now they knew the secret. Help creates more help. Kindness multiplies. Hope spreads. And when you lift others up, everyone rises together. That was the lesson of second chances. That was the gift of grace. That was the power of community. And it had all started with two kids being kicked out of a party, and one man deciding that wasn't how the story should end.